such an interesting case with Israel because they're so dependent on the United States, and they need our support, and they have so much influence in the U.S. that they're able to do all the things that they're doing with impunity. But that support is evaporating so rapidly. It just makes me feel like, what can they do? And the more they try to shore up that support, the more exposed they get. We talked about the leak about paying $7,000 per post for pro-Zionist propaganda. And then, I think Candace Owens is dealt a death blow to the Zionist movement here in the U.S. because I think a lot of people that listen to her are more of the conservative evangelical groups. And I talked to you just a little bit about it, asked if you're following Candace Owens, because she had that text message leak, so right after Charlie Kirk was killed, it was amazing how all mainstream media and Netanyahu's on television, there was this huge push to portray Charlie Kirk's legacy as the greatest friend to Israel. That's all we talk about, just how great of a friend he was to Israel. And it was rock solid, and all these people saying he was wavering, they're just haters and there's nothing there. And so a lot of these people that were saying this, the propaganda group, people like Josh Hammer, was in that text group chat that Candace Owens leaked, and that has been verified by TP Turning Point USA itself.
Right.
Where he said, this is verbatim, this is 48 hours before he was shot. Jewish donors play into all the stereotypes. I cannot and will not be bullied like this, leaving me no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause. That's what he said, 48 hours. And, and Josh Hammer said that, that was in the group chat, was going on to saying how Charlie Kirk was such a great friend to Israel up to the day he died. So many people. And I think it was very smart of Candace to kind of just sit on this text message. So all these people outed themselves. They said, oh yeah, we know. And then she dropped this bomb.
Yeah,
said,
no, that's a true bombshell. That's not an exaggeration. That's quite extraordinary. And it's, again, Max Blumenthal's done some excellent work that was, that supports, that he was leaving the Israeli camp, or at least he had strong doubts. But this is even, takes it even farther, right? He had actually stated that he was going to leave.
Right.
So this is quite extraordinary. And 48 hours before, it may just be a coincidence, that he got assassinated, but I can understand, because I know there's some problems with the case as it has been presented by the authorities. There's some serious...
So many problems.
Right.
So many problems.
I know. I understand that. But yet, we still don't see any evidence that Israel was involved. But if people suspect it, I think they're justified in their suspicions. That's all you can say. It's just like...
Right.
Right.
I know, Dad, you're somebody that just you don't like to go out on a limb. You have to see the evidence, but just personally, your belief, I don't know if you want to even say, I'm comfortable saying that I believe that Israel was behind it. There's just too many things that are lining up. It
is quite an extraordinary, coincidences do happen. But this is such an extraordinary coincidence that you have to really wonder and be strongly suspect, if that's all I can say at this point.
Yeah, there were people a month before as well that posted on X, people that knew Charlie Kirk and friends of them, saying that he was worried that Israel would kill him.
Yeah.
Israel's Charlie Kirk's bodyguards were Israelis. And there's a scene with him with Bill Maher just saying if you want security, the Israelis are the best. You got them. All my security is Israeli. Yeah. There's so many little things that just line up that, it just, maybe it doesn't even matter. We'll never know. Maybe, maybe never have the whole evidence, but as long as the court of public opinion believes it, then it's over. But you can see also why, because Charlie Kirk was the last bastion of conservative Christian evangelical fighters that Israel had in their camp, that the Zionists had. And I felt like if they lost him, that evangelical Christian Zionism would just evaporated. It still is. They didn't recover it. They're not able to turn it around. But if he was openly, he probably could have exposed so many things if he wanted to, if he wasn't killed, and how many people he brought with him. I'm sure if you were Netanyahu and they saw that message, and it's we got to do something now. They even offered him $150 million, Netanyahu himself, per year to fund Turning Point USA. There's just too many things. I can't.
Mm-hmm.
So, right. I don't know. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
knows
Right.
100%, but
Yeah.
just the court of public opinion's out there. So it's,
Right.
yeah.
Even if it turns out that, okay, this was just some extraordinary coincidence and this disturbed individual in Utah shot him for his own, perverted reasons. Still, we've had this information, that Charlie Kirk had stated right there shortly before he died that he was leaving, the pro-Israel camp, and that's extraordinary right there, and that's has to be sending shockwaves, throughout the, let's say, the Christian Zionist community.
Right. And it just, it's so damning as well because just all these Zionists, they just immediately went on overdrive to try to cement Charlie Kirk's legacy as the greatest pro-Israel fighter. We'll make murals to him and paint him. And it just makes it even more sinister if people believe that Israel might have been behind it, because it was clear that they knew he was leaving. They knew he was leaving. And then they attempt to just take over his death and just use it for their own cause.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen here? I mean, Israel, just anything we say, Israel is done. There's no way that Israel gets out of this long term. We just hope that the death of Israel is just Zionism dies slowly on its own. People leave Israel. People turn their back to Israel.
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately, I think it's not over. Even if this plan, manages to succeed, which, I think is unlikely, but could happen if, Trump just does not let go, insists on this going through. If because he does have a lot of allies, in this case within Israel and, in the Arab states, he could make this happen. Again, I don't think it's likely, but he could. But let's say even that it goes that far. It's just the thing is that Israel hasn't changed. It's still the same country that did what it did. And, those radical forces are still there. It'll be the same. It's going to be the same Israel that is probably just want to lick its wounds for a while, take a rest, and then it's going to start somewhere else. Whether it's in the West Bank, again, throughout these 2 years, the ethnic cleansing efforts in the West Bank have accelerated. Again, it's just, over 1,000 have died, and there's been thousands and thousands of detentions and villages destroyed, and even in more territory seized. As the ethnic cleansing has accelerated there in the last 2 years, and it may be that they'll just focus for a while on the West Bank. They'll focus on Syria. Maybe they'll start up another war with Iran. All these things are a possibility, and then they'll get back to Gaza at some point. But for them, that's unfinished business, and there will be some reason to do it. Because Israel is still Israel. It's just not. I don't see. This doesn't solve any of the basic problems. There's some people who will think that a Palestinian state's going to come out of it. It's not. It's not even in the 20-point plan. There's just something that maybe could put us on a path to a Palestinian state. That's, I think, point number 19. But it's not, Israel has made it clear they're not going to accept a Palestinian state. They still, all of them, this is not just Netanyahu and the extremists, but this talk of a greater Israel, of the West Bank being theirs, that's Judah and Samaria, that's how they speak of it. This is our land. That belief is still very widespread, and anything, it's growing within Israel. So this is not over. There's no desire on the part of the Israelis. There's absolutely no willingness. There's absolutely no chance that the Israelis are going to accept a Palestinian state. They will get the two-state solution. It's not going to happen. And so the basic problem remains unsolved. And, it's not over. This may just be at the best, it may be a temporary lull in the fighting and the ethnic cleansing, with respect to Gaza. But it's no more than that.
If humanitarian aid groups and organizations come into Gaza after this and they start doing some cleanup, and we just have undeniable evidence of what we all know is a genocide that was being enacted upon the people of Gaza. And the ICC finally comes down and just says, "Yeah, this is a genocide."
Oh, you
What
mean the
happened?
yeah,
ICJ or
ICJ, right?
right, ICJ. Like what happens then if it's just clear, that's undeniable that this? I mean, this is the Holocaust of our time, is what were witnessing, that we saw,
Right.
and then in Germany, there's a military defeat, there's an end, but here we don't. Has that happened historically? Like, I don't know. There's the Armenian genocide, all these things. I don't fully know the histories of these, but how does that play out when we just know that, hey, this country and all of its people, the vast majority, were supportive, were engaged in a genocide, and the civilian population was largely supportive of it. What do we do? It's like,
well, no, this is, again, it's not over. That's the thing. Even if this 20-point plan is implemented, it's not over. All these problems are still here, and there's going to be struggles, continue to be a battle waged within the United States over U.S. public opinion, that the Zionists are clearly losing at this point. But they're going to do what, we see what they're doing. They're actually just taking over the major media institutions.
It's insane.
And they're already changing policy. For example, TikTok, that was one area, and they understand. They'll go after those. I'm sure they're pressuring Elon Musk right now, and we may see changes. All of these are, they're going to fight. But the hope is, the hope is that people will see it, for what it is, and it will lead to an even stronger reaction. I would hope so, unless our government is so corrupt, our institutions are so corrupt that they actually, are complicit in this takeover. And,
well, I think they are, right?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, I guess. But maybe what I should say is that it succeeds in the end, and there's just nothing we can do about it as a people.
Yeah.
It's just like people will become, in general, very cynical about democracy, so-called, in the West. We see like what's happened in France. It doesn't matter that Macron is like the most unpopular guy in France, even with his own wife, so-called, whatever.
His husband.
I don't know. But
I don't know.
Anyway.
Candace is... She's a dog, man. She just goes after.
Okay.
Like, she's relentless.
Right. Well, anyway,
but she's got to be so happy right now. Yeah. Now that Candace Owens is all focused on Charlie Kirk, she's got to be breathing a huge sigh of relief.
Maybe she's behind it.
Yeah, maybe she's.
But anyway, I'm just saying, like, this is just one example among many. It's just like he is probably the most unpopular man in France, and yet he's still in charge. It's just like, what's going on? What is this? I thought that, and that the most popular party, is clearly being kept out of power. That's not just true, and of course in France, but it's true in Germany, and it's probably going to be true. We'll see what happens in Great Britain. But again, it's similar things are happening there, but it just, I think it's leading to a great deal of cynicism about democracy in general. Say like, yeah, okay, we have these polls that show that people are waking up to what's going on, but you don't see it reflected in the power structures. Maybe the U.S. will be different. I hope so. But we'll see.
Well, I mean, speaking of democracy, didn't you just see that the Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to the Democratic opposition figure, Maria Corina Machado, in Venezuela? This seems to me clearly just to set up that now I'm sure we're going to war with Venezuela. Yeah. Like, here's the opposition, and Nobel Peace Prize.
I know, it's extraordinary. It's kind of like what the IAEA did, like the day before the Israeli attack on Iran. It's just a setup. They're just, really, I saw that in my jaw. I had absolutely no respect for the Nobel Peace Prize Committee, especially since after they awarded it to Obama, like just 2 months into his first term before he'd done anything. Right. It was just so stupid. But that still took me by surprise. It's like you're just openly stating that you're a pro-regime operation, committee working with the CIA or something. What the heck? And then I just saw it. She just came out with a statement, I think it was on Twitter, saying that how happy she was and that she dedicated this prize to the suffering people of Venezuela and to to Donald Trump, who's for his decisive support for democracy. It's just like, what are you talking about? He's got that fleet right off the coast. That's
That's
this is
democracy.
all democracy. That's what it's all about, right?
Right. I mean, I even heard, I don't even know if this is true, but I saw on Twitter that she even asked Venezuela, I mean, no, she asked Israel for help to take out Maduro. Like, so it's just a regime change candidate that they gave to the Nobel Peace Prize. That's all it is.
Embarrassing. I mean, how obvious can they get? It's really...
So the idea is that she got the Nobel Peace Prize. Now we kill Maduro and we fund some rebel group that's led by this woman and try to put her in power so we can say, look, we got the Nobel Peace Prize winner is now ruling Venezuela and is cutting all these deals with America for these to develop their oil fields. Isn't that fantastic?
Right.
Is that really what it is? It just seems too obvious to me.
I think that's what it is. Maybe it's just a question. I guess this is the question. Either like this, the committee was lobbied by people who were representing, this regime change operation. That's a possibility. Maybe they weren't in particular, but they're just dupes. It means that these guys that make this, whoever they are that are on this committee, that they just watch mainstream media and they believe everything. They see everything through the distorted lens that mainstream media provides us. And so they just believe that, the suffering people of Venezuela under the authoritarian dictator, and, they can't see, what's really going on. They actually believe the stories that are planted in the media. Mm-hmm. It's one way or the other, but either directly or indirectly, it's a regime change operation here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at all of this just through the lens of, our talks, our geopolitical talks, and we're talking about potential war with Venezuela. I don't know anything I know very little about Venezuela. I've never heard of this woman, Maria Corina Machado. I mean, maybe I should. Is there anything that she really did that is great? I don't want to just immediately just look at it as this is regime. Is there any charitable thing that we can say, or is it just?
I'm sure there is. There's something. I like you. I don't know anything. But, it was just enough to see that tweet of hers, it's just because she obviously in that tweet was just offering herself up as like the replacement for Maduro. Candidate. Yeah, mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, it was just crystal clear. There was no effort to distance herself from Donald Trump and what he was doing.
Okay. So are you thinking that war regime change operation in Venezuela is going to undergo soon by the end of this month?
I would guess so. It just seems like, I'm not sure what they're waiting for, but again, they're probably trying to, get all their different assets positioned, maybe off the coast, but also within the country. And who knows what they have planned. Sometimes these things take a little while to set up. We'll see, but it seems almost inevitable. Nothing is inevitable, but it seems almost inevitable that they're going to strike in the not so distant future. It could be any day.
Okay. Well, we'll